The recovered radio logs from the Bali bunker begin at 1:43 a.m. At first, the recording sounds normal. Boots moving across concrete, flashlights clicking on, low voices speaking over the radio. Then, one of the soldiers says something that investigators would replay dozens of times later. "We found another tunnel." 30 seconds after that, someone shouts the word "contact," and one of the soldiers disappears. To understand what happened in that bunker, we need to return to the moment the patrol first realized the valley was not empty. The soldiers stood in silence inside the underground chamber. Flashlight beams moved slowly across the walls covered in scratched names. Dozens of them, maybe hundreds. Every name belonged to a soldier. Some were call signs, others were full names. Many had dates carved beside them. Some of the dates were years old. Others were recent. Too recent. At the very bottom of the wall was the newest name, Private Daniel Keller, carved into the concrete only hours earlier. Keller stared at it. "I didn't write that." Sergeant Mendez studied the wall carefully. The carving looked fresh. Dust still clung to the grooves in the concrete. "Maybe someone else did," Mendez said. Keller shook his head. "No one else would know my name." Before anyone could respond, the radio crackled. The same voice they had been hearing since leaving the base whispered through the tunnel. "Welcome back." The words echoed softly off the concrete walls. Keller looked down at the scanner in his hands. The signal strength was now completely maxed out, which meant the transmitter was very close. Mendez turned toward the second tunnel at the far end of the chamber, a narrow corridor disappearing into darkness. "That's where the signal's coming from?" Keller nodded. "Yeah." Mendez lifted his rifle. "All right. Stay tight." The patrol moved deeper into the bunker. Their boots echoed softly as they entered the second tunnel. The air felt colder here, almost damp, like the deeper parts of the structure had not been opened for years. Loose cables hung from the ceiling. Pieces of old Soviet equipment lined the walls. But something about the tunnel looked wrong. The concrete was cracked in places, as if parts of the bunker had been expanded later. Mendez noticed it too. "This tunnel wasn't in the original design." "How do you know?" one of the soldiers asked. "Because the Soviets built straight corridors. This one curves." The tunnel bent slowly to the left before opening into another chamber. This room was much larger. The ceiling rose nearly 20 feet overhead. Metal catwalks stretched across the upper walls. Large support pillars stood in the center of the chamber. But what caught the soldiers' attention first was the equipment. Crates, radios, military gear, stacked against the walls. One of the soldiers approached a crate and brushed dust off the markings. "Sergeant." Mendez stepped closer. The crate had U.S. Army supply codes printed on the side. Recent codes, not Soviet. Keller scanned the rest of the room. More crates, more radios, more equipment. All American. But none of it belonged to FOB Archer, and none of it should have been there. "This bunker wasn't empty," Keller said quietly. "No," Mendez replied. "It wasn't." The radio scanner suddenly beeped. Keller looked down. The signal indicator moved slightly. "What is it?" Mendez asked. "The signal," Keller frowned. "It's moving." Mendez looked at him. "What do you mean, moving?" "The transmitter. It's not in one place anymore." Before anyone could answer, something echoed across the chamber. A metallic scraping sound, soft but unmistakable. Every soldier raised their rifle. Flashlights swept across the room. The sound came again, somewhere behind one of the large concrete pillars. One of the soldiers whispered into his radio. "You hear that?" Another voice answered. "Yeah." Mendez stepped forward slowly. "Who's there?" The beam of his flashlight crossed the pillar. Nothing, just shadow. Then a shape moved across the far side of the chamber, fast. One of the soldiers swung his flashlight toward it. "Movement!" The beam illuminated something standing briefly between two pillars. A figure, wearing military gear. But something about the way it stood looked wrong. The arms hung too long. The shoulders were angled strangely, almost like someone trying to imitate the way a soldier stands. The soldier who saw it took a step forward. "Sergeant, there's someone..." The figure moved, not like a person, faster. It slipped behind the pillar and vanished. "Contact!" Flashlights swung wildly across the chamber, but there was nothing there. No struggle, no sound, just empty space. Mendez stepped forward cautiously. "Jackson?" No answer. Keller felt his hands shaking. "That's not possible." Then the radio burst with static again, and Jackson's voice came through the speaker. "Sergeant?" Every soldier froze. The voice sounded perfectly normal, but it was coming from Keller's radio. "Sergeant, I'm over here." Mendez slowly raised the radio. "Jackson?" The voice replied immediately. "Yeah? Come get me." Mendez stared into the darkness where the soldier had disappeared. "Where are you?" There was a long pause. Then the voice answered. "Right behind you." Every soldier spun around at once, flashlights sweeping the chamber. Nothing. The radio crackled again, but this time the voice had changed. The tone was wrong, too slow, too careful, almost like something practicing human speech. Then the voice said one sentence. "There were others before you." Keller's scanner began flashing wildly. Multiple signals appeared on the screen, dozens of them, each one broadcasting the same frequency, from deep inside the bunker, from tunnels that shouldn't exist. Keller looked up slowly. "Sergeant." Mendez kept his rifle aimed into the darkness. "What?" Keller swallowed. "The bunker. It's not empty." Before Mendez could answer, the voice returned, now speaking in multiple tones at once. Different voices layered together. Voices the patrol recognized. Voices of soldiers. Voices of the missing patrols whose names were carved into the walls. And finally, one voice that sounded exactly like Keller. "All of you came looking for the signal." The chamber lights flickered. The darkness deepened. And something began moving through the tunnels. Something that had been listening, learning, waiting. Then the voice whispered one final sentence. "You're not the first patrol. You're just the newest."